November 12, 1945. A muddy track somewhere between Fallingbostel and Wessendorf, in the British occupation zone of Germany. The sky is the color of wet slate, a low, oppressive ceiling that presses down on the land. Rain isn't falling, but the air is heavy with it, a cold, clinging damp that seeps through the thin wool of their greatcoats and settles deep in the bone. For Anneliese Schmidt, former Oberhelferin of the Luftwaffe Nachrichtenkorps, the world has shrunk to the 2 meters of churned earth in front of her and the rhythmic, sucking sound of boots pulling free from the mud. Squelch, pull. Squelch, pull. It is the only metronome marking their slow procession into oblivion. There are 200 of them, a column of grey-clad women snaking through the desolate landscape. They are the leftovers of the Reich, the female auxiliaries, the signal operators, the administrative clerks who kept the great machine of the Wehrmacht running. Now, the machine is scrap, and they are its discarded parts. Anneliese keeps her eyes fixed on the back of the woman ahead, Greta, whose shoulders are hunched against a wind that carries the scent of pine and wet rot. You don't look at the guards. You don't look at the sky. You look at the road and you walk. That is the first rule of survival. The British Guards, Tommies from a territorial infantry regiment, are young men with old faces, as weary of this as the prisoners. They march with their Lee Enfield rifles slung, not pointed. Their commands are clipped, perfunctory. Keep it moving. Close up the gap. There is no overt cruelty, only a profound, bureaucratic indifference. To them, the women are cargo to be delivered, a line item on a transfer order. This, Anneliese understands. This is the logic of war, a logic she once served. You are either a tool, a target, or an obstacle. To be ignored is a kind of safety. They thought they would be ignored. Her stomach is a tight, aching knot. The day's ration had been a slice of black bread, dense and sour, and a cup of watery chicory coffee that did nothing to fight the cold. Hunger is a constant companion now, a dull throb that underlies every thought, every step. She remembers lectures in the training school near Munich. The lecturer, a stern-faced Hauptführerin, speaking of sacrifice, of the indomitable will of the German woman standing behind her man. They had believed it. They had felt the swell of pride, the certainty of their righteous cause. They were building a new world. Now, they are marching through its ruins, and the only will that matters is the will to place one foot in front of the other. The grand ideals have burned away, leaving only the cold ash of reality. Whispers occasionally ripple down the line, quickly shushed. Rumors. They are being taken to a permanent camp. They are being shipped to England for labor. They are being handed over to the Russians. This last one is a cold spike of fear that cuts through the monotonous misery. Everyone knows what happens in the East. But Anneliese pushes the thought away. Fear is a luxury. It requires energy she does not have. All that remains is a core of hard, defiant pride. They would not break her. She would not cry or beg. She would be the soldier she was trained to be, even in defeat. She and the others have formed an unspoken pact, a silent community of scorn. They hold themselves apart, their expressions carefully blank, their posture rigid. It is the only armor they have left. The landscape is relentlessly flat, broken only by stands of skeletal birch trees and the occasional shell-pocked barn. For days, they have seen nothing but empty fields and abandoned farmhouses. But now, something changes. Up ahead, where the track meets a slightly wider, cobbled road, a shape materializes through the low-hanging mist. It's a smudge at first, a darker gray against the lighter gray of the sky. Then, a roofline. A church steeple, jagged and broken, like a fractured bone pointing to heaven. A village. The rhythmic squelch of boots falters as heads lift along the column. A murmur spreads, a current of anxiety. Civilians. After days of isolation, they will have to face their own people. Anneliese's jaw tightens. This will be a new kind of test. The British sergeant at the head of the column blows a sharp blast on his whistle. Column, halt. Tighten the formation. No talking. His voice, raw from the damp air, carries an edge of apprehension. He knows what these encounters can be like. He's seen it before, the shouting, the thrown refuse, the raw, bleeding hatred of a defeated people finding a target for their rage. The guards unsling their rifles, holding them loosely across their chests. It's a subtle shift, but everyone feels it. The air grows thick with unspoken possibilities. As they march closer, the village resolves into a portrait of devastation. It's less a town and more a collection of wounds. Houses stand open to the sky, their timbers blackened and splintered. Rubble lies in great heaps, already being reclaimed by weeds. It is a place where something terrible has happened, and is still happening. Yet, there is life. From the cellars, from the patched-up sheds, from the hollow shells of homes, people emerge. Not a crowd. Just a handful of figures, drawn out by the sound of marching feet. They are like ghosts haunting their own graves. Old men with sunken cheeks, children in clothes that are too big for them, and women. Women whose faces are etched with a hardness that Anneliese has never seen before. They line the narrow street, a silent, unmoving audience. Anneliese braces herself. She expects shouts of traitor, or Nazi whore. She expects them to spit. She remembers the newsreels of liberated French towns, the shorn heads, the public humiliation. Her training taught her to be impervious, to show no weakness. Look straight ahead. Do not engage. You are a prisoner of war, not a criminal on display. She lifts her chin, her eyes fixed on the broken steeple down the lane. But she can feel their stares. You can always feel them. It's a physical pressure, a weight on the skin. This gaze, however, is not what she anticipated. It is not fiery with hatred. It is not gleeful with scorn. It is something colder, heavier. It is the gaze of absolute exhaustion. They look at the column of women in their worn grey coats, at their muddy boots and tired faces, and their expression is one of hollow appraisal. In Anneliese's eyes, and in the eyes of the other prisoners, they see the uniform. They see the remnants of the power that brought this ruin upon them, that sent their sons and husbands to die in Russia, that left them to starve in the rubble. Anneliese suddenly feels the eagle and swastika that used to be stitched on her sleeve like a phantom burn. She is a symbol. A walking, breathing reminder of a promise that ended in this. A young boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, stands beside his mother. He is not crying. His face is pale and smudged with dirt, and his eyes, large and dark, follow Anneliese as she passes. They are ancient eyes. He has seen too much. He is not looking at a soldier or an enemy. He is simply looking. And in that simple, unblinking stare, Anneliese's carefully constructed armor begins to fracture. She is not just a symbol. She is a woman, not much older than his mother. She was part of this. Her hands, though they never held a rifle, typed the signals that coordinated the bombers. Her voice relayed the orders that moved the panzer divisions. The boy's stare is not an accusation. It is a fact. Like the rubble. Like the hunger. Suddenly, the column lurches to a stop. A farm cart, pulled by a skeletal horse, has slipped a wheel into a shell crater, blocking the narrowest part of the street. The driver, an old man, is shouting at the horse, his voice thin and cracking. The British sergeant stomps forward, cursing under his breath. They are stuck. Stuck right here, in the heart of the village, trapped in the crossfire of all those silent, watching eyes. The woman behind Anneliese, a young auxiliary named Elke, begins to cry. Not loud, but a series of quiet, desperate sobs she tries to stifle in her collar. A guard turns. "Be quiet," he barks, his own nerves fraying. The silence that follows is immense, a vacuum waiting to be filled. The halt stretches into an eternity. The old farmer and two British guards struggle with the cartwheel, their grunts and curses the only sounds breaking the oppressive stillness. The women of the column stand frozen in their ranks, a tableau of defeated soldiers on display. Most stare at the ground now, unable to meet the unwavering gaze of the villagers. Annalise focuses on a loose cobblestone at her feet, counting the cracks in its surface. 1, 2, 3. Anything to build a wall against the silent pressure. Anything to keep Elke's muffled sobs from prying open her own carefully locked emotions. They are to be ignored. They are numbers. They are the enemy. This is the order of things. Then, a movement at the edge of her vision. Annalise risks a glance. From a darkened doorway, a figure detaches itself. It's an old woman, bent and slow, her body wrapped in a threadbare black shawl. Her face is a landscape of wrinkles, a testament to a life of hardship that began long before this war. She moves with a painful deliberation, her feet shuffling on the stones. A British corporal watches her, his hand resting on the stock of his rifle, but he makes no move to stop her. She is ancient, frail. What threat could she possibly be? The old woman is carrying something. Annalise can't make it out at first. It's held carefully in both hands, as if it were a precious treasure. As she draws closer, Annalise sees what it is, a simple tin cup, the kind every soldier carries. But this one is old, dented, the enamel chipped away in a dozen places. And from its rim, a small, impossible plume of steam rises into the frigid air. It's a ghost in the gray light, a fragile signal of warmth in a world gone cold. The old woman doesn't walk toward the guards. She doesn't approach the struggling men at the cart. She shuffles directly toward the column of prisoners. A ripple of confusion passes through the ranks. The women shrink back, uncertain. Is this some new form of humiliation? Is the cup filled with dirty water, or worse? Annalise's muscles tense. She prepares for the insult, the final twist of the knife. The old woman bypasses the first few prisoners, her eyes scanning their faces. She stops in front of Lottie, a girl from Hamburg who is barely 17, whose face is a pale mask of shock and fear. With a slowness that seems to command the attention of the entire street, the old woman holds out the cup. Lottie stares at it, her mouth slightly open. She does not understand. The old woman makes a small, encouraging gesture with her head. "Drink," she rasps, her voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Drink." Annalise feels the air leave her lungs. It isn't dirty water. It's hot. From the steam, she can tell it's not coffee or tea. It's likely just water, heated over a carefully tended fire, a precious expenditure of fuel. It is nothing. And it is everything. In a time of profound scarcity, where every calorie is hoarded and every scrap of fuel is a lifeline, this woman is offering a cup of hot water to her enemy. To a girl wearing the uniform of the army that destroyed her world. It is an act that does not compute. It violates every rule of this new existence. They are the vanquished. The guilty. They are supposed to be met with hatred, with vengeance, with a just and righteous scorn. This is something else entirely. It is a gesture of pure, inexplicable humanity. The old woman's eyes, deep-set and weary, flick up for a moment and meet Annalise's. There is no accusation in them. There is no forgiveness. There is only a vast, shared exhaustion. A recognition of a common suffering that transcends uniform, ideology, and guilt. In that fleeting glance, Annalise feels the foundation of her world, her pride, her defiance, begin to crumble into dust. The moment is shattered by the crunch of boots. The British sergeant, having noticed the disturbance, is striding toward them. His face is a knot of official displeasure and confusion. "Here now," he barks, his voice loud and foreign in the fragile space created by the old woman's gesture. What's all this then? He looms over the old woman and the terrified girl, a figure of authority in a situation that has no precedent in his field manual. The old woman does not move. She just stands there, holding out the cracked cup. The sergeant stops, his question hanging in the cold air. He is a young man from Liverpool, trained for combat, for logistics, for maintaining order. He was not trained for this. He looks at the old German woman, her face a mask of stubborn resolve. He looks at the teenage prisoner, Lottie, whose tears now flow freely, silently, down her dirt-streaked cheeks. He looks at the chipped tin cup, steam still whispering from its rim. For a moment, the entire war, the entire collapse of a continent, seems to be held in balance on this muddy street. His regulations are clear: no fraternization, no unauthorized contact between prisoners and civilians. But the rulebook feels a world away. He glances over his shoulder at the silent villagers watching him. Their faces are unreadable. He looks at his own men, who are watching him just as intently. He is the authority here. He could enforce the rules, knock the cup away, restore the proper order of victor and vanquished. But the sight of the steaming water, the sheer, unadorned humanity of the act, seems to disarm him. He lets out a long, frustrated breath, the sound visible in the air. "Oh, get on with it," he mutters, more to himself than anyone else. He turns his back on the scene, stomping back toward the cart as if suddenly fascinated by the problem of the wheel. Let's get this thing shifted. Now. He didn't forbid it. He allowed it. With that small, reluctant abdication of authority, a dam breaks. Lottie's trembling hands reach out and take the cup. The metal is warm, a shocking, forgotten sensation. She brings it to her lips and drinks the hot water in small, desperate sips. The warmth spreads through her chest, a small sun in the frozen landscape of her body. Then, another villager moves. A man with an empty sleeve pinned to his coat steps forward. He pushes a single, boiled potato, its skin blackened from the fire, into the hand of Greta, the woman in front of Anneliese. Greta stares at it as if it were a diamond. It doesn't become a feast. There is no outpouring of charity. There is not enough for that. But one by one, a few more villagers step forward. A woman pushes a crust of bread into another prisoner's pocket. An old man gives another a slightly withered apple he had been saving. These are hesitant, furtive exchanges, carried out under the deliberately averted eyes of the British guards. It is a conspiracy of shared misery. A brief, silent truce in a war that was supposed to be over. Anneliese is offered nothing, and she expects nothing. She simply watches, a witness to the impossible. The acts are small, but their impact is seismic. This is not pity. It is recognition. The villagers are not seeing uniforms anymore. They are seeing hungry women. Finally, the cart is heaved from the crater. The sergeant barks the order. Column, forward march. The shuffling begins again. The women move past the last of the houses, leaving the silent villagers behind them. But everything is different. The air inside the column has changed. The rigid, defiant silence has been replaced by a stunned, fragile one. Anneliese walks, but she no longer feels the mud or the cold. Her mind is reeling. That small cup of hot water has scalded her soul. It was an act of grace she did not deserve, and it is more devastating than any punishment. It doesn't absolve her. It implicates her. It forces her to look at the rubble not as the backdrop of her defeat, but as the consequence of her actions. The question she has held at bay for months rises, undeniable and suffocating: what have we done to these people, our people? As dusk begins to bleed across the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of purple and gray, Anneliese glances at the faces of the women around her. The hard masks are gone. In their place is a raw, bewildering mix of shame, gratitude, and a terrifying, unfamiliar flicker of something that feels almost like hope. The road ahead still leads to a prison camp, to barbed wire and an unknown fate. But the journey that truly matters, the one that takes place inside, has been irrevocably altered on a ruined street by a handful of starving civilians. Night has fallen completely by the time they reach their destination. It isn't a permanent camp, just a temporary transit point, a muddy field enclosed by a high fence of sagging barbed wire. A few corrugated iron Nissen huts stand like metallic tombs in the gloom, their windows dark and empty. The guards herd them through the gate with practiced efficiency, their torches cutting sharp, nervous beams through the darkness. This is a familiar landscape to Anneliese, the architecture of captivity. Barbed wire, mud, and the smell of damp earth and human despair. They are processed under the glare of a single, naked bulb hanging from a pole. Names are checked against a list, their meager possessions, a spare pair of socks, a photograph, a worn letter, are briefly inspected and recorded by a bored-looking corporal. The procedure is impersonal, designed to reduce them to a manageable administrative problem. In the past, Anneliese would have met this humiliation with a cold, internal fury. She would have clung to her rank, her training, her identity as a soldier of the Luftwaffe, as a shield against the indignity. But tonight, the shield is gone. Her mind is not here, in this bleak, sterile moment. It is back in the village, replaying the image of an old woman's wrinkled hand holding out a dented tin cup. Inside the hut, the air is cold and smells of mildew and straw. They are assigned a space on the floor, on thin, lumpy pallets that do little to insulate them from the frozen ground. Anneliese lies down, pulling her greatcoat tight around her. The exhaustion is absolute, a physical weight that presses her into the earth. But sleep will not come. Before today, this misery would have fed her narrative of victimhood. It would have been proof of the enemy's cruelty, another injustice to fuel her defiance. Now, it feels different. It feels right. Not as a punishment for being a German soldier, but as a consequence, a small share of the suffering her nation unleashed upon the world. The suffering she saw in the hollow eyes of the village boy. The barbed wire outside is a physical barrier, a thing of steel and thorns. But Anneliese is suddenly aware of a different kind of prison, the one she has been living in for years. A prison of ideology, built from slogans about destiny, purity, and national glory. A prison that taught her to see entire populations as subhuman, to view compassion as a decadent weakness, and to believe that any atrocity was justified in service of the cause. The kindness of the villagers was not a key to unlock the gate, it was a mirror, forcing her to see the bars of her own cage for the first time. They had thought their suffering was unique, the grand tragedy of a noble, defeated army. But the villagers, who had lost everything, showed them a suffering that was deeper, quieter, and far more profound. For a long time, the only sound in the hut is the sighing of the wind against the metal roof and the rustle of women trying to find a comfortable position on the hard floor. Then, a voice whispers in the darkness, so quiet it is almost lost. The water, it was still hot. It is Elke, the young woman who had been crying. Another voice answers from across the hut. He gave me a potato. I still have it. A third woman speaks. An apple. They are not talking of escape, or rations, or the future. They are sharing the fragments of an event that has shattered their understanding of the world. They had braced themselves for stones and received bread. They had expected to be invisible, ghosts in their own land. Instead, they were seen. Not as soldiers, not as Nazis, but as human beings who were cold and hungry. Anneliese closes her eyes, the darkness behind her lids filled with the image of the old woman's face. The future is a terrifying void. She is a prisoner. Her country is in ruins, occupied and shamed. Her entire belief system has been exposed as a murderous lie. Everything she was is gone.